Thank you very much, Kerry, for the introduction. I'd really like to thank the organising committee for inviting me to be here. Wonderful opportunity to come back to a Bayesian meeting and to see so many old friends. When I say old, I mean old, really. Just look at some of us. Anyway, and this is a great place, isn't it? Extraordinary. I mean, it's an extraordinary place. I mean, has anyone managed to escape yet? I mean, it's really shame. If you do, a big white balloon comes after you and crushes you. Okay, so I'd like to talk about my work. I'm very lucky. I'm the Winton Professor for the Public Understanding of Risk. Winton Capital Management is a hedge fund. So I'm paid by a hedge fund. They've endowed my post, which is one of the reasons I never do anything to do with financial statistics or financial risk. So there's no question of a conflict of interest. So it's pure philanthropy, and we got this website, Understanding Uncertainty, a blog, and do stuff on that. And, oh yeah, Kerry mentioned my latest book, Sex by Numbers, available in all good, dirty bookshops. And so the statistics of sexual behavior took a long time to write, took a long time to choose the cover. That was one of the suggestions for the cover. Yeah. Quite quick. I test my audiences on that one. And the Welcome Collection, wanted me to write this book, and they saw that and said, no, can't have that, no one's going to read that on the tube. I think it's a real shame, but no, the cover they dare not show, that's what they could. So I've also done that. Now, do people recognize, who recognizes that? Oh, not that many. Oh, to recognize that, you've either got to be, an 8-year-old child or have the mind of an 8-year-old child. So this is in Buenos Aires, and it's the Wipeout course. And I applied to be part of this idiotic game show because I thought, as Professor Risk, I'm under a professional obligation to tackle the big red balls. So, and if you'd like to see, so the point about this is it's an obstacle course, and 20 people fly out to Argentina, and one comes back with £10,000, the winner, and the rest come back with bruises, broken bones, etc. And there's a qualifying round where the top 12 go through to the next round, and I wanted to get through to the qualifier. So that's my crucial thing, to get through the qualifier. So you look on the Wikipedia and find out all the qualifying times for everyone who's ever taken part in the program. Really valuable. And so that's the histogram of the qualifying times, and the median about 3 minutes 10 seconds. These are the people who end up sobbing in the mud, and I didn't want to be one of them. But the crucial thing is what's the time of the 12th fastest person, because that's what I had to do. And if you do that, a nice low S curve there, you can see that after the first series, the course got easier, and it settled down to about 3 minutes as the qualifying time, the median qualifying time. So I thought I had to do it in 3 minutes. So I'm going to just briefly show you, I hope this works, how I got on in the qualifier.
Wow, this is incredible. The total wipeout course, it's beautiful. Look, down there. Is that 20 ordinary everyday Brits, including a railway engineer, a poker player, and a penguin keeper I can see waving?
Now, this is Professor David Spiegelhalter, OBE, and he's a professor of risk.
What this means is that if I'm going to qualify, I've just got to get below 3 minutes.
Yeah, right. Below 3 minutes is the key, and off goes the professor towards the nasty snowballs. Yes? Uh-oh. Yeah, I know what he did. He followed the y-axis when he should have followed the x. On to Granny's house now, a risky destination.
All right, Professor Spiegelhalter. Oh!
Yeah, he could still be doing this in under 3 minutes. All he has to do is clear both logs. Ow! Big ow!
The gentleman doth profess too much.
Despite that risky performance, Professor David Spiegelhalter, OBE, climbs to the finish in 3 minutes 17, just shy of his time.
Top 12 go through.
Now, taking the lead is Suspicious Helen, followed by Saxy Fiona and Carolyn from Outer Space. In fourth is Ball Crossing No Meat Marina. In seventh, Rob Boy. And scraping it through to the next round are Professor David Spiegelhalter, OBE, Ali the Penguin King, and Guinea Pig Mel.
Yeah. So that was all I wanted to do, was to get through the next round. And if you're very good, I'll show you how I got on it in the next bit. Now, I work in a lot of it basically in public engagement. And when I say the usual suspects, I'd say the standard stuff you get asked to do. and Jeff Rosenthal's been doing this kind of stuff for ages in Canada. You get asked about lotteries, you get asked about birthday coincidences, you get asked about sport. So that's the sort of bread and butter stuff that as a sort of performing probabilist statistician, you know, that you get called in to talk about. So one of the things I've you know, worked out or concentrated on is, everyone asks, oh, the chance of winning a lottery jackpot. You know, how do you communicate that? So a standard 649 lotto, like Canada, like Britain used to be, or something like that, so you're choosing 6 numbers out of 49, that's about 1 in 14 million chance of winning the jackpot. How do you illustrate that? And I don't think I thought of this, I'm sure it's been done before, but grains of rice, I think, is a very good example. Because 60 grains of rice is about 1 gram. I counted them, and then I found it was on Wikipedia anyway, really annoying. But anyway, and so I did that. And so 14 million grains of rice weighs about 225 kilos. So you've got to think of 225 bags of rice? Well, how can you visualize that? It's around 250 liters. It's a bath full. So, well, 20 is, you know, not that full. So it's about a bath full. It's about that, a bath about that deep in rice. So the chance of winning a 649 lotto is in this bath of rice. There's 1 golden grain being dropped in there, and you pay your £2 or your dollars or something like that, and you reach in and pull out that grain of rice. And what's remarkable, of course, is that people do win. Now, the British lotto has gone up to 59 balls. So it's 1 in 45 million now. It's an overflowing bath of rice. And the Euro Millions is the 1 in 100 million chance of winning. So how do you visualize, you know, what does 100 million grains of rice look like? Well, it looks like that. So it's a paddling pool full of rice. And a TV program, we're doing a pilot on coincidences for ITV, said, okay, we'll do it. Of course, they didn't really do it, because that would be a terrible waste. So the paddling pool is actually upside down and filled up with blocks underneath, and with the rice smeared quite thinly over the top, which I thought was quite neat. So we had to pretend to reach in and pull out the golden grain, which of course I pulled out because it was stuck on the end of my finger. Anyway, that was the tube. So that's the 100 minutes. So that was the visualization of the chance to win. And again, what's amazing is people do actually win. It just shows how many tickets they sell. Okay, and the other one is birthday coincidences. You know, 23 people in a room, more than a 50-50 chance of 2 people having the same birthday. And the classic analogy for that, or example, is football teams. 23 people on the pitch, the 2 teams and the referee. So half of the teams playing in the World Cup, you know, half the matches, there'll be 2 people with the same birthday. And again, the researchers in this TV program managed to find 2 teams. It was Croydon Athletic versus Rotherham. It had to be a low league, because you can't film Premier League teams doing this. And what was nice, we lined the teams up and shouted and said they had to call out their birthdays. It was all being filmed. The two stepped forward and then 2 more came up. There was another match that we didn't realize was there. So on the spot, I had to sort of work out what the chances of that were. So this is the sort of bread and butter stuff. The other stuff is sport. I'm currently engaged in a competition with Mr. Whippy, who's Evan Davis, who's a major journalist in the UK. It's his dog, who regularly makes predictions on BBC Radio of the football matches. So they decided to compete against me, man versus dog, and I was just using the favourite, for example, and Mr. Whippy was choosing, in a randomised experiment, and he chose Wales for England-Wales, so I think I'm in with a chance there. And also, he chose, on Wales-Slovakia, he chose Slovakia, and I chose Wales. So I'm 1 up on Mr. Whippy at the moment, so we'll see how that goes on. So that's the sort of idiotic stuff that one has to do. Oh, I couldn't resist putting that in. The other thing is, Donald Trump plans to focus on 15 states. Actually, there's only 12 states there. So the other thing that I should say, you know, anyone involved in this uses Fox News graphics, because you can give entire talks from Fox News graphics. They are just a wonderful supply. I've got hundreds, I won't show them all, but I've got a huge supply of them. That's Fox News' idea of a pie chart, which works. It's great, because 12-year-old kids can get that one and laugh at it. It's really good. So, but it's almost not fair picking on Fox News, is it? But that's the sort of staple diet of this sort of work that one's got. Okay, I do some serious stuff. A climate change program on climate change statistics with Norman Fenton, who does forensic science, Bayesian work, Hannah Fry, an applied mathematician who's excellent and is developing a fantastic career in science communication work. I've done Tails You Win. Again, you notice these are BBC 4 documentaries, and we're really lucky in the UK that BBC 4, you can't turn on BBC 4 without finding some Cambridge academic either striding around Pompeii or doing something stupid like me. So they're full up with academics being commissioned to do really quite good TV programs. For this one, they said, science and chance, you've got to do something dangerous. And I said, I want to swim with sharks. And they said, nope, because we've only got 300 quid. So you find out when you make TV that there's a big difference in the budgets between different scientists, what they get. So I got to do a parachute jump, tandem parachute. Who's done a parachute jump, tandem skydive? Yeah, cool. Frightening? Great, frightening. What do you think the risk was? What do you think, okay, what do people think? What's more risky, doing that or 100 miles on a motorbike? Motorbike? What's that or 10 miles on a motorbike? Motorbike still? Okay, let's see. Okay, so if you want to know the risks of parachute jumping, you go onto the websites. And this is the British Parachuting Association website. Actually, you have to search quite hard to find this spreadsheet. I don't know why, they don't put it on the front page. But if you click and click and click and click, you eventually find this, that 4,600,000 jumps, 48 deaths. Almost exactly 1 in 100,000 or 10 in a million jumpers die. For tandems, like I did, 750,000 tandem jumps, 2 deaths. I think these might have been correlated events somehow. My years of statistical experience suggest that these were not independent. So, yes. Anyway, so that's 3 in a million. I reckon with getting in the plane, there's about 7 in a million chance I would die. Do I care? Is that, big, small? You go to the US Parachuting Association, and you see the 7 in a million, or about, is really quite stable over the last 15 years. Fatalities per 1,000 jumps, multiply this by 1,000 to get whole numbers, 12, 13, 8, 7, 7, about that. So there's really quite a stable, overall risk. So 7 in a million, is that a lot? Okay, so the unit of acute risk that I use quite a lot is stolen from Ron Howard, who developed in the 1970s in Stanford, and it's the micromort. So 1 in a million chance of sudden death. So parachuting is about 7 or 10 micromorts, roughly. Marathon is about 7, hang gliding is about 8, scuba diving is about 5 on average, and a motorbike is about 6 miles for a micromort at the moment in the UK. So let's say 7 micromorts, about 40 miles on a motorbike, jumping out of that plane, roughly, on average, about 40 miles on a motorbike. So the 100, yeah, motorbike, 10 actually, no, I think jumping out of the plane is more dangerous. So the micromort, I like it, and people like it, and people tend to laugh. It actually is a bad unit to use, I've found out. And why? Because it sounds funny, and yet it's being applied in really deadly situations. Health and Safety Executive use CPM, chance per million, which actually might be a better thing to use. So that's the problem with having something that's attractive and funny, is that people might not like it. Now, these are some examples. I like this one, getting out of bed and going to work, and that's because in the UK at the moment, in England and Wales, about 50 million people, 50 a day die a non-natural death from accidents, murder, violence in some sort, and so that's the number. And it's roughly about 1.6 micromorts in the US on average. Probably in Western Europe, it's about 1 on average. Now, one of the interesting things about, this is the lifetime risk from an asteroid, so don't get too worried about that. Let's not get too concerned. But various other things you might want to do will cost you many more micromorts. One of the interesting things, though, about this 1 per day, and we'll come up with another example at the moment, is it's one of these figures where nearly everyone is less than average. Can you see that? Nearly all of us have got less than a micromort risk. You are not enduring a micromort risk per day in this place. Well, it's a bit difficult to get. You could get run over by some of those trolley things, I suppose. But we are not having a 1 micromort risk per day, and that's because most of this average of 1 a day is taken up by drug takers, people in gangs, people with very dangerous lifestyles. So actually, we are a lot less. It's one of these examples where an average is a deeply misleading figure. Okay, we'll come up with another example in a moment. Now, those are the acute risks, the kind of things that are going to kill you on the spot. This sort of stuff, much better than this Italian food, This is I don't know why we don't get stuff like this, for dinner. A nice burger in batter. Now, this stuff though is not going to kill you on the spot unless you choke on your burger in batter because you're so keen to eat it. So a micromort is not the correct way of thinking about the risk from these things because it's long-term harm to your body or whatever. But this is the sort of risk that gets huge amounts of media coverage, because they're to do with diet and exercise and lifestyle and things like that. So, for example, you may have seen this story just back in October. The bacon, ham, and sausages have the same cancer risk as cigarettes, warn experts. No, they haven't, and no, they didn't say that at all. There was the WHO who said they're in the same risk category as cigarettes in terms of the evidence that they're carcinogenic. Who ate bacon this morning? Yes! Start the day with a carcinogen, I say. Actually, I don't do it all the time, that's the point. Now, what the WHO said, they reported it as a relative risk. They said 50 grams of processed meat a day raised your risk of bowel cancer by about 18%. So it's a relative risk. That's known to be a manipulative form of risk communication. Highly, really taboo among risk communication circles to use that form. The WHO's risk communication was terrible, absolutely dire. I know it's a wonderful example of how bad you can be. Because the point of it is that we should know this, that relative risk, in order to know how important a relative risk, we need to convert it to an absolute risk. And to know that, we need to know the baseline risk of getting bowel cancer, which is about 6%. So out of 100 people sitting down, like the rest of you, sitting down to your muesli and your yogurt this morning, I know the sorts, yeah, just look at you. And so sadly though, 6 out of 100 people like that will still get bowel cancer during their lifetime. Now we're looking, let's look at 50 grams of processed meat, 6% of people get bowel cancer anyway, so what's an 18% risk increase over 6%? Now this is a difficult sum to do. We're mixing percentage points with percentage change. The difficult sum to do. This is exactly what we're trying to get into schools so that, while all journalists find this completely impossible to do. I've never met a single journalist who's prepared to do this on their own back without asking help. Whereas we hope in the future, school kids will just find this completely routine. So that's the aim. So what is an 18% increase over 6%? Well, it's about a sixth of that. It takes it up to 7%. So that's how many people now, with all 100 people are eating that every day of their lives, stuffing their gob with a 3-rasher bacon sandwich every day of their life, 1 extra case of bowel cancer. Now, put in those terms, it doesn't look so great, does it? And with some work, it wasn't just me, others used that that way of communicating it and got it onto the BBC 6 o'clock news on the day that came out with a bit of work. The other people who did this very well was Sense About Statistics in the US. Fantastic column by Rebecca Golden, going through all this stuff in great detail. Really nice example of picking up on bad risk communication and showing how it should be done. But in order to actually have some effect, it's too late to complain about it afterwards. And so I might mention this a bit later. We're very lucky in the UK. We've got an organization called the Science Media Centre where I'm on a list of scientists, statisticians, anyone can join, and you get embargoed press releases on all this stuff before it gets in the newspapers. So it's time to get the quotes out to the journalists and, as I'll point out later, sometimes keep stuff out of the news. Okay, the point about these relative risks is that they're really badly understood. This sort of stuff, Daily Express saying less meat, more meat. What do they say? If people cut down the amount of red meat they eat, 10% of all deaths could be avoided. Whoa, isn't that amazing? Yeah. Isn't statistics wonderful? So, people just don't understand this stuff. So could we find better metrics to communicate it? The absolute risk at a fixed over the lifetime risk is an obvious way to do it. Changes in life expectancy is another way to do it. One I'm quite fond of is sort of copied from this kind of stuff. Now that's Dr. Oz. Do we know Dr. Oz? He's a smug git. Look at him. He says, he's trying to flog you stuff in the US. He says his chronological age is 55, but because his healthy lifestyle, which he'll sell you some stuff to imitate, his real age is 47. Now, whatever you think about Dr. Oz, this is actually a very effective communication method. what the idea is to talk about your effective age. So we've got some trajectory of a typical healthy person and some risk level. It may be your 10-year chance of a heart attack or stroke. It may be your chance of living the next 5 years or something like that. So your age is here, and that's your risk level. Well, drawing that across and solving for this, you get what your effective age is. You are effectively older than your chronological age. If you're lovely, if your risk level is down here, you are younger, like Dr. Oz, you are younger than your chronological age. This is a very powerful method, and I've just got a paper accepted on this. You know, really going through this method, it's been shown. You can find your heart age on many websites now. That's the NHS Choices one, which I was in a team that drew up that. And it's been shown in some randomized trials that telling people their heart age or their lung age can actually influence their feelings about changing their behaviors. Actually, very difficult to show it changes anyone's behavior, but it makes them, increases their motivation. Okay, so if you can find out your UBL age, which compares your risk profile with 500,000 people from the UK Biobank cohort, the Longevity Explorer. It asks you about how many cars you've got, and you know, how would you describe your usual walking pace or whatever. And then it'll tell you, for example, that this is what it told me, my UBL age was 52 years. Yes, gives you a confidence interval, in fact. This means your risk of dying in the next 5 years is equivalent to the average risk for the men aged 52 in the UK. And I'm 62, so great. Yeah, yes, fantastic. So there's my, that's got another scattered icon. I've used these before as scattered icon array. That's what it's called. You know, 2% of people aged 62 with similar answers, 98 will survive. So I thought, oh, that's nice, that's very reassuring. And I was on radio talking about this, and the guy on the radio, he was 10 years in his actual age as well. Everyone who does this is 10 years younger than their actual age, except maybe some people are 15 years. Now, it's extraordinary. Everybody I've talked to, if you go on it, you'll be 10 years younger. You really, if you want to feel better, just use this website. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Now, why is that the case? Why is it, and I had to try to explain this on the radio, why is everyone younger than the point? The point is everyone's UBL age is so low because it compares you with the mean average 5-year risk. And most of that risk is provided by people who are already sick. They've already got, you know, really terrible, you know, terminal diseases. And that, they provide nearly all that risk. So most people, nearly everyone is less than average. You know, it's like, you know, nearly everyone's got more than the average number of legs. You know, 99.99% of us have got more than the average legs. Nearly everybody is less than average risk. You know, and as I said for micromorts as well. So you should be using the median or the risk of a healthy person, not the average risk. So just a simple, you know, nice idea, but they messed it up by choosing the wrong comparator. So, and these are quite subtle ideas that, I was trying to work out on the spot. Okay, again, a serious example. I was on a group that was, drew up the new cancer screening leaflets in the UK. And you may not know, but actually cancer screening, breast cancer screening and others, but particularly breast cancer screening, prostate screening, definitely, they don't even do it in the UK. And breast cancer screening is controversial. So many medics are not great fans of breast cancer. Many female doctors do not go for breast cancer screening, for example. So it's very controversial, highly contested science, real split in the community, but it was decided that the new leaflets would reflect, in fact, what these arguments were. In other words, they wouldn't be trying to persuade people to have screening. They would say, consider the offer of having screening, present the pros and cons, and not actually recommend that you go for screening. So I think this is probably unique, that the cancer screening leaflets in the UK do not recommend cancer screening. They based on this idea, powerful idea of uniform reporting of harms and benefits. They are both reported. And I was so how do you develop some material like this? You do it in cooperation with the users, with the audiences. So this was a citizens' jury that sat there for 2 days, the poor women, to hear all the evidence. And what I did was to show different ways in which the evidence could be communicated. And then I wasn't allowed to say which one I liked. I had to go out of the room and leave them with about 20 sheets of paper with different graphs and numbers and tables, and they'd say which one they liked best. And bless them, they chose the one that I would have wanted to recommend. and because they're sensible people, and they're also the ones that all the psychological research suggests is the right one to use, which is to use the idea of expected frequencies. You see, I did it with the bacon sandwich as well. What does this mean for 100 people? So you use expectation as much more primary than probability, which I think might, people in this audience will engage with rather strongly. That expectation is the crucial element in this. So, for example, this is in the new cancer screening leaflet. There's nothing here about the sensitivity and specificity of screening, nothing to do with the accuracy of the screening, nothing to do with the chance of false positive. It purely says, out of 100 women who have a mammography, 96 will get a normal result, 4 will get recalled, but most of those will not have cancer. So we've done the Bayesian argument. We don't get messed up with trying to explain why a test that's 90% accurate, in quotes, ends up with most people having a false positive. We don't have to explain it. We go straight for what it actually means for people. So that's in the leaflet, very powerful. Now, when we look at the long-term effect of screening, this information is in the leaflet as well, and this is the controversial stuff. We say that based on a review by good statisticians who conclude that out of 200 women attending screening for 20 years, 15 will develop breast cancer, and 12 will be treated and survive, but 80% survival rate. 3 will die early from their breast cancer. So, fantastic, and increasing all the time. These numbers will change because survival is increasing all the time. Let's compare it in exactly the same way with the bacon sandwich, with another expected frequency tree showing 200 women who are not screened, 15 develop breast cancer, 8 treated and survive, 4 will die early from their breast cancer. So the harm, the benefit of the screening is 1 fewer death among those 200 women. However, 3 of these women will never know they've got cancer. They'll have a form that doesn't become clinically obvious. There won't have any treatment, biopsies, there won't be cancer victims. They'll die of something else. They'll go on and develop other diseases or just die of old age. So the point is that this means that the harm of screening is that there's 3 unnecessary treatments. There's 4,000 women treated unnecessarily in the UK every year because of the breast cancer screening program. That is in the leaflet, amazingly. But 1,300 women a year whose lives are saved, quote, or at least early deaths prevented by the cancer screening program. And that is now left up to individuals to decide what they feel about that harm-benefit ratio. Okay, what isn't in the leaflet is this picture. It got taken out at the last draft, much to some of our anger, really, because we feel, I know I can take anyone through this, but they felt, they tried it on some people and said, we don't understand that, too many numbers, don't understand what this means. So what this shows is actually, I think, a big problem in communication, why communication is very subtle, because you're dealing with a wide range of audiences, particularly a low numeracy audience. Health information is aimed at a reading age of 11 and a very low level of numeracy. But there is some evidence that people with low numeracy don't engage with the idea of informed choice, shared decision-making, wanting to engage with that information. So the paradox, what I say, is that the leaflets are designed for people who don't want to read the leaflets. So what's the conclusion for that? No, before I come to the conclusion for that, I must just say, this use of expected frequencies as a way of communicating risk, chance, probability is now in the GCSE syllabus in England. We've got it into this is the 12 to 16 syllabus, educational syllabus, to do conditional probabilities using expected frequencies with 2-way tables, tree diagrams, and Venn diagrams. So I think a huge success that we've got it into it wasn't just me, a group of us said that this really should be in there. And then the teacher said, we haven't got any material, so I've written with a teacher, ex-teacher, we've written a book called Teaching Probability that's coming out in August, and in which expectation is primary before probability. We develop the rules of probability through working through empirical experiments, empirical frequency trees, expected frequency trees, and then to probability trees. So that's the order in which we do it. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of risk communication? The crucial thing is that one size does not fit all. Audiences differ. A certain percentage, probably less than half, really want to engage with it, probably only about a third. Most people will say, I don't know, tell me what to do. What would you do? Tell me what to do. And that's fine. If people want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But what it means is that one should be moving towards layered formats. For example, and easy to do on a website, the top level is just a gist level as it's known. Number light, maybe some nice pictures, but very gist level. And then at the next level, you have the numbers in tables. Tables, people love tables. I think a good table is a graphic, and as much effort should be spent on the tables as the graphics. People love tables, but tested graphics, and with a range of different graphics, some usually not pie charts, dire, horrible, ghastly pie charts, but always. But bar charts, icon arrays, stacked icon arrays, stacking the little people up as bars, very good for gist level communication because you don't need to count, you can just get it visually. And then at the third level down, for the real enthusiasts like you lot, you can see the certainty and the strength of evidence about these numbers. Where do these numbers come from? For example, those breast cancer numbers are judgments. There's no simple statistical basis for those numbers. There's a complex set of data, and in the end, they are expert judgments that are in there. So the co-product, what I mean by co-produce, is that all of this, right from the beginning, should be done in close cooperation with the users. We've just been working on projects, and what I've learned is that the patients should be there from the first meeting to talk about their needs and requirements, and then throughout the process of developing, that the users are in touch with what's going on. And that's the plug to remind me. And I'm very lucky I've got more funding from my donor, my benefactor. We're forming in Cambridge a Winton Centre for Risk and Evidence Communication. And we're looking for a chief executive, if anyone would like the job. So we're to do this kind of balanced communication for people who really want to, I think, empower audiences with better information. Okay, so, Twitter. I can't open, I like Twitter. Don't know, people like Twitter? I like Twitter. It's my main source of information in this area, and I use it for rapid sending out links for people. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, a story in the Daily Telegraph, financial crisis caused 500,000 extra cancer deaths according to Lancet study. It didn't say that at all. But never mind, we can ignore that for the moment. And what this Telegraph reported said every 1% drop in healthcare spending was associated with 0.0053 additional deaths per 100,000 people. Yeah, kind of do some sums, do some rough sums on that. There's 60 million people in the UK. That's 60 groups of 100,000. So, no, hang on, there's 600 groups of 100. So multiply that number by 600 and you get 3. That's what they're saying, which is nonsense. They could never have identified a risk that estimated 3 extra cancer deaths. So and that got a lot of retweets. You just rapidly identify a bit of nonsense in the press and get in there quickly is one of the things to do. Okay, how much of this is Bayesian? Well, because this is supposed to be a Bayesian meeting, isn't it? So let's see what's Bayesian here. I think, well, first of all, I never mentioned the B word. No. Never passes my lips. So that's the first thing. However, there's lots of these implicit ideas all the time in all this language about probability and chance that one's using in public communication. So much of it is, in fact, Bayesian. Oops, what have I done? Oh, that's the blank the screen. Okay. First of all, these probabilities don't exist. They're always constructed on the basis of evidence and judgment. They don't express the truth of the world. They're all conditional on your current source of information. And I just try to push that through all the time in everything I say. Well, my judgment about these chances would be, et cetera, et cetera. You don't always remember to say it, but try to say what that is. And the other thing is this use of expectation. I'll come on to that moment. Use of expectation. I would expect this to happen in this many in 100 people. Again, it's very powerful. That does not mean, in fact, using expected frequencies does not mean you're using a frequency interpretation of probability, because that expectation can be entirely subjective based on judgment. It's a frequency metaphor, not a frequency mean definition of probability. So that's important. And the other thing is that you can, we as Bayesians can apply probabilities to uncertain facts, apply it for epistemic uncertainty. And of course, all our judgments change as information comes in. And I think I've got a bit of, what's my timing? Oh yes, yeah, I'm going to do something. I'm going to play a game with you. You might need a pen. No, you don't need a pencil and paper. Just use your brain. I'd just like to show you what I do with school kids now a lot. And no, I must say, yes, sorry. Eliciting probabilities. Yes, happens all the time. I'm on the committee drawing up the advice about Zika virus for British people going to the Olympics. Now, there's a statement going to go out saying the risk is low, except for pregnant women, whereas blah, blah, blah. You know, it's all in terms of likely, low, you know, unlikely, rare, all these words, which mean, it could mean almost anything. You know, they really are not well defined, and they'll change from context to context. I mean, I don't know if you knew, but, you know, in the EU, a side effect that happens for 2% of people taking a drug has to be defined as common. Common. And people think common means 30%. But if it's 2%, that by EMA regulations, that has to be defined as common. Anything between 1 and 10% is common, according to the European. So these words are terribly dangerous just to use words. So I'm hoping that we can have a second layer for the people who want to know about the judged quantities on which these statements, so this gist level statement is made. And that means eliciting judgments from experts. So elicitation is an integral part of this. Okay, I'm going to quick game. This is what I do with the school kids. Quantifying your ignorance. Think whether I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You've got to say whether you prefer A or B, and think of how confident you are about your answer. So essentially, I want to elicit subjective probabilities, but I don't use that language for it. How confident are you? And a number between 5 and 10. Again, I didn't want to do it out of a high, I want to make it much simpler. So 5 means no idea, 10 means I'm absolutely certain about your opinion. And score yourself when you hear the correct answer, and that is the scoring rule. And the very rapid ones among you might recognize what that scoring rule is. It's a transformed quadratic Breyer score. It's transformed so that 0.5 is centered at 0, multiplied up to give integers. So it's a Breyer score, which gives you 25 if you get 10 out of 10 and you're right, and if you say 10 out of 10 and you're wrong, you lose 75. So really nasty, asymmetric penalty. It's a non-linear score. So I'll just do a couple of these just to show what I do with the kids, and you can think for yourself. So for example, who has the most followers on Twitter, Justin Bieber or Rihanna? So I'm sure you know this. You know, I'm sure there's part of your language that you know. Actually, some of these are going to be more difficult for you than the kids. Yes. Okay, so if you've got no idea, you just say 5 and you'll stay at 0. But otherwise, just choose an answer A or B and think in your mind about whether you'd say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 about your confidence. Have you done that? Okay, what do you think the answer is? Yeah, Justin Bieber got in there. Okay, so if you said 10 out of 10 for Justin Bieber, you're fine. If you said 10 out of 10 for Rihanna, you got off to a really bad start. So you can see who is older, Prince William or Kate Middleton, Kate Princess, Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge. Who's older, William or Kate? I don't say. You may know, you may not know. If you know, that's really sad. That's a bit sad, I think, but never mind. Okay, so never mind. Anyway, it's B. She's older than he is by 6 months. So you can see what I go on, and then we do IMDb rankings. I did this in March. Which is higher, WALL-E or Toy Story 3? So which is the most popular film in the IMDb database? WALL-E or Toy Story 3? Now, these are the really tricky questions. All this scientific stuff you do, I don't know. These are the important matters in the world. Okay, so what do you think? Get your number. What do you think? Probability. And the answer is? Hey. WALL-E is, well, in March anyway, WALL-E was beating Toy Story 3. Both fantastic films, I may say. Okay, so you can see what I do, and that's which is larger, Belgium or Switzerland, and it's Switzerland, and which is bigger, Venus or Earth, and the answer is Earth. So you see, I do this with a class of kids, and they get really excited about it. They're all, God, you can't shut them up. And at the end of it, you ask how people did, and there's always some boy who got minus 300. You know, there's always, it's always a boy. And you know, what I say is that the point about this is it divides the class into 3 groups of people. The people who are either lucky or know something and know they know. And then there's people who are very cautious, usually females, I think, who don't got too much, you know, really good. They say 6s, 7s maybe, very cautious, things like that. So because they know they don't know. And then, of course, you've got these oafs who don't know but think they do. And this is, I would say, this is not the person you want for financial advice. So, okay. So you can see how you can take a very simple thing, but I think it's a really valuable lesson. A very simple use of a Brier scoring rule. Okay, so, oh yeah, so I could say I'm still a Bayesian knight. Underneath it all, I'm a Bayesian knight. Yeah, exactly. So the joke was lost on the remaining people, the other people at the fancy dress party. Okay, so when things go badly, just to finish off with stories of the fact that things can go badly. And getting asked the wrong question. This is, I was on the radio talking about why the opinion polls were so bad for the UK election, and I was all ready to talk about telephone polls with a less than 20% response rate and how bad they were, which was the final conclusion. And what do? They immediately say, are people influenced by the polls? About which I know absolutely nothing whatsoever. So this is live in front of them on the most popular program on British radio, and I'm going bah, 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 so awful. When you explicitly have arranged what you're going to talk about, and then they ask you something completely different about usually why. Why is this? I don't know, I'm a statistician. Wrong time. The other time, if the awful attacks in Orlando had happened in the UK, I'd be getting phone calls from journalists asking me to talk about terrorism risk. And I don't now. I did, because you always get asked about risk just after some dreadful event has happened. Whatever you say, it's going to sound bad. So no, I just steer completely clear of it now. I did once, and it was all right, but I just don't want to ever do it again. Okay, and the other thing is I hate to say being stitched up. This has only happened to me really once, but it was last week. Okay, so I was talking about my new book, Sex by Numbers, blah, 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 and I was talking about, and just to show, actually this isn't being stitched up, this just shows the stupidity that you can get. I was talking about this once, and Dame Ann Johnson said, she said 1/3 of people have sex before 16, which is true now, boys and girls. There's about 1/3 sex below 16 in the UK. It's leveled off now. But by the time this got to the Daily Mail, there's all this stuff here, we can forget. But then it said, finding as part of a project by Cambridge mathematician, found 30% of total sexual encounters take place before 16. No, she didn't say, I certainly didn't say that. So that's the sort of stuff suddenly you find. What is it? You see, it's prosecutor's fallacy. It's the prosecutor's fallacy. She said, given you're under 16, the chance you're having sex is 30%. They've taken it as, given you're having sex, the chance that you're under 16 is 30%. So you need that. It's actually just getting the denominator wrong, the reference class wrong in a percentage. Very simple. It's why when you give percentages, you must always define what the denominator is. Never just quote percentages. Always give the reference class. I just can't resist showing this data. This has nothing to do with Bayesian stuff. This is data that's in my book that nobody's viewed or visualized before. I got it from the survey of 2,000, this is 2,000 women and men between 35 and 44, the reported number of lifetime opposite-sex partners. And it's riveting, really. I mean, the most common value is 1, which is very nice. That's sweet. And then it goes 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you notice it all starts getting a bit vague after about 10. Well, 20, 50, 50. And I cut the graph off then because I'd be out there down the beach if I'd put in some of the responses, which get increasingly rounded, except this gentleman who said 47. This is a sort of nerdy accuracy that we respect as statisticians. But he was a statistician. Was there anyone in the audience? 47. But the other thing you notice is that the men are reporting more sexual partners than women, which, taken over the whole population, on average, is a mathematical impossibility. But it's a very frequent finding. Anyway, so that's the whole thing. And the other bit of information, this is using one of the graphics from the survey's own infographics, is the decline in the amount of sexual activity over the last 20 years. Documented for years this came out in 2013, I think, the original coverage of this. 16 to 44, median number of occasions of sex in the last 4 weeks, opposite sex couple, 5, 4, 3. So, and that's 1990, that's 2000, that's 2010. So with this trend, by 2040, nobody's going to be having any sex at all. So, this is very worrying indeed. So what happens is that this is blamed on the iPad. Journalists just pick on this all the time. They pick on this statistic and they all know why. And I just say, statisticians don't know. I don't know why, but the researchers happened in their press release when this came out, mentioned iPads, and that's all the press covered were iPads, about that. But actually, I know when I talk about this, I say, I blame the box set. Oh no, I can't come to bed. I'm watching the second season of Game of Thrones. So that's what, but I got no evidence for that at all. Okay, so I said all this last week at the Hay Literary Festival. And, a bit of seriousness that, about the fact that it is thought that increased connectivity, people's checking their phones, always something to watch, is reducing sexual intimacy. And but I'm a statistician, it's not my job to say why. So I said all this at the Hay Festival, and there was a journalist in the audience who reported my casual comments as serious science. And Britons are having less sex and Game of Thrones could be to blame, warned Cambridge professor. I've never even seen Game of Thrones, for heaven's sake. So, and this is the article. Game of Thrones and other are preventing people having as much sex as they did in the past. It's very worrying. And if current couples will not be having any sex at all by 2030. Yeah, I mean, says Cambridge professor David Spiegelhalter. And you think, oh God, because I did say, I even got the sums wrong. I should have said 2004. And I thought, oh my God, what I hadn't realized. That was in the Daily Telegraph. I thought, who cares, Daily Telegraph? Who reads the Daily Telegraph? The entire world picked up on this story. In no time, it was Newsweek. It was in all the daily papers. It was in every paper. Just endlessly recopying the Telegraph. No one asking me, just endlessly recopying this drivel. Is Game of Thrones, is Game. One journalist spotted it was a joke in Forbes. This guy, excellent. I emailed him afterwards saying, thank you for the one word. Game of Thrones killing your sex life. And he did a great one. He plotted the data, and instead of projecting it forwards, he projected it backwards. So at the beginning of the Christian era, they were doing it 200 times a month. So he got the joke. But nobody else did. Couples will stop having sex by 2030. Sex will be obsolete by 2000. Is it German? Italian? It's just, I know, 40 years building up a reputation, down the toilet in a week. Yeah, so it's a little bit frustrating, to be honest. It really is a bit desperate. So anyway, the conclusions from my little bit of entertainment are, seriously, in spite of that bad experience, this is a really valuable thing to do. There's a huge demand for insights into numbers. Really, there's a lot of demand. And a lot of people now trying to do it, fact-checking organizations and things like that, trying to do it. And statisticians have got a very good non-aligned image. I mean, a lot of scientists, if you come from psychology, if you come from climate, if you come from anything, people think you've got an agenda, or you're trying to persuade them. Statisticians, actually, they're so nerdy. They're great. They've got a really powerful image. You should cultivate the nerdiness. Cultivate the sort of staring at your shoes and things. Really, it's very valuable indeed. So, but if you're going to do this, I got a lot of media training. It's taken me a while, really taken some time to do this. And so, for example, we're now in the Royal Statistical Society. We've got an ambassador program, and we're training up young statisticians. 2 cohorts. We've now got our second cohort going of young statisticians getting trained into really so that I don't have to do this stuff. Other people will be doing it. And the last cohort, they've been on TV, they've been on the radio, they've been doing all sorts of stuff already. And they're all terrified, but with a bit of training, they can do it. It's great. But contacts are important. It takes time. I say sometimes, I've only been stitched up once, essentially. So really, it's, developing contacts is a really, so I just want to say this is an incredibly valuable thing to do. Oh, I forgot. Yes. Do you want to see how I got on? Yes, of course you do. Tough luck, you're going to see it anyway. So, right, here we go. Last.
The 12 remaining competitors must mount the ski lift and do their utmost to remain standing. To help them, they have a podium to perch on and a bar. Finally, it's Professor David Spiegelhalter, OBE.
What am I doing here? I don't stand a chance.
The ski pole arms have started. Now, they will need to jump over both arms, which get raised up as the game goes on. Remember, the last 5 still hanging will go through to the next round.
Oh, Professor Spiegelhalter.
I don't stand a chance.
All making light work of those ski poles so far. There's Professor Spiegelhalter, OBE, Rob Boy. Those poles are getting higher now.
A couple have gone.
There's John. John again. And James. Ooh.
They are not letting go.
No. There's Mel. Oh no, Mel!
Oh, Mel.
Hence now, the next 2 to fall will be out of the
Seven
competition.
left, 7 left.
Marina, Suspicious Helen. Professor Spiegelhalter, OBE. Ow! 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 Just presenting himself to that arm there. So dignified.
They've stopped it. They've stopped it.
So Professor Spiegelhalter, OBE, is the next victim of his first ski
Well,
lift.
it's all part of being a statistician. Thank you very much indeed.